Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unique Peace. I'm Janice. I am an intuitive medium and Reiki Master Teacher here on Long Island, New York. And today I am going to be joined by Lisa Campion. She is a psychic counselor, Reiki Master Teacher, best-selling author of 4 books, and she's got over 30 years of experience. Today we're going to talk about peace and bringing our gifts to light. So I would like everyone to join me in welcoming Lisa to the program. Good
Hi.
morning, Lisa.
Hey, Janice. Thank you so much for having me on your program. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you. I'm excited. You have a lot to share with the world. So let's start at the beginning, or what the beginning is for you. You have 30 years of experience as a spiritual counselor, a Reiki Master
Mm.
Teacher, a writer. You had mentioned you're doing an oracle deck. So walk us through how you woke up.
You know, I love that question, Janice, and it's such a weird story. So I really like sharing it. But I was I think I was born psychic. And I grew up in the 60s. So I was born in the 60s, and I grew up in the 60s and 70s in New England, just outside Boston. And back then it really wasn't a thing you could talk about. It was something, I couldn't share with people. I was seeing, ghosts, I called them the gray people. I didn't really know who they were, what they were. Like, well, I did know they were dead. Um, but they would sit around my bed at night and try to talk to
Mm,
me. I was seeing colors on people. I was seeing the energy of the natural world. I was seeing sort of angelic spirits and shadow spirits too. I'm a visual psychic, so I was getting the whole thing. And I mean, my parents, God bless my hippie parents, they were hippies, my parents. And so, they, like, didn't drag me to the church and throw holy water on me, but they were like, "Oh, you have such a good imagination, Lisa." Like, "Oh my goodness, you and your imaginary friends." It just was something that was it was so far outside of the conversation anyone could have. So I spent a lot of my childhood trying to figure out what the heck was going on, how to turn it on and off. Was I crazy or not crazy? Um, you know, and then trying to pretend to be normal in public, which was really challenging. Um, and then I went to college. It was in the 1980s, and it was the dawn of the new age. Hallelujah. All of a sudden, there's, like, spiritual new age bookstores and teachers. And I had my first real official psychic teachers. And that's when I started working as a psychic. I was 19. It's 1980, whatever, something. And I graduated from college and how to practice, like, seeing clients. And I really quickly learned that I didn't know enough to really help people. I remember this one moment where somebody came in and wanted to speak to their loved one, and I brought the message to her, and she cried, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I was 19, you know what I mean? Like, what
right.
do we know? So when I graduated from university, I went back to school and became a therapist. And that for a long time, I combined therapy and psychic readings together. And then in 1999, 26 years ago, learned Reiki. And Reiki was still pretty fringy back then. It was still
Yeah.
kind of like an oddball thing to do. So then I added energy, work into the mix. I taught in an energy medicine school for 15 years. And then I had a very full time, very busy full time private practice. I was a single mom. It was kind of a trip. So nowadays, I mostly I've switched out of the role of doing private sessions, although I do some, and moved more into teaching and mentoring. I really feel like I had this sort of revelation. It was like 2015, so it's quite a while ago. I had this revelation of, like, wanting to be a greater impact and help more people, a bigger volume of people that I could do in the one-on-one sessions. And that's when I wrote my first book, published my book, The Art of Psychic Reiki, in 2018. And really, because I felt like my mission in life is to create an army of healers to go out there and save the world, you know? And and I still think that. I mean, that's sort of what gets me out of bed in the morning, what sort of motivates me to do all the things. And I really love mentoring people, mentoring other psychics, working with psychics, healers, and empaths to help them open up their gifts. because the world needs all the healers it can get, that, and then
Especially now.
so many, especially now more than ever. I say that every day, and the next day I wake up and I'm like, no, now more than ever. and, and I'm like, wow, and I think more and more people are having their gifts open up. They're understanding that, they're an empath, or that they're learning Reiki. People do, like I always say, yoga, Reiki, and meditation are sort of the three gateways to psychic opening and to spiritual growth in general. So more and more people are doing that, or maybe you're doing a little plant medicine, or maybe you're, all the things we do that pop us open. And I feel like I wrote the books that I wanted to find in the library that didn't exist when I was searching, that I became the mentor that I wanted to find, that I teach the classes that I wish I had, So, because I feel really passionately about helping somebody else make that transition in a much more graceful way than I did, because I just thrashed my way through it all. It was ugly. I mean, it was really school of hard knocks, and now it's a really happy day for me if I can help somebody else do it with more ease and grace than I did.
I totally understand what you just said 100%. I feel that my awakening was shortly after my dad passed. He passed when I was very young. I was a toddler.
Wow.
And the imaginary friends and my mom, she didn't know what to do with me. She's a single mom. She didn't know what to do with me. She was like, imaginary friends, that works. You're cool
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
And then the whole, as things are happening as you get older and you're like, what, I have no explanation for this. Fantastic. And trying to
Yeah.
fit in. And it's
Mm.
difficult. It's difficult
Yeah.
at times. And I like you want to be able to help others. I think my son is my gateway to helping others because he is gifted.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of learning all the things that are in the toolbox that can be there for a young person. I think I'm geared more towards the younger crowd. So
Wow, that's great. I love that, Janice, and I feel like so many people, it's such a common story that I hear. They're, you know, shut down their gifts when they're kids, because when you're a child, let's say, especially like the generation that I grew up in, so many people had to shut down their gifts because maybe you grew up in a religious, environment that's like, no, that's the devil. So you better stop that,
that.
or you're
Mhm.
freaking out your parents. Your parents are like, knock that off right now, and they mean it. Or they do drag you to the church and throw holy water on you. We see some things that really frighten us. So many people have like some sort of actual PTSD around their childhood psychic life, you know, they shut it down, and then when they hit, their adult years, something happens that invites them to open it up. Maybe it's either a sort of spiritual awakening, or their own um evolution, right? Or maybe it's having a child. I hear that story so often, Janice, that and I think every generation comes in more psychic than the last generation. We're
I
evolving as
agree.
humanity. So every generation is more psychic, more sensitive, more awake. Thank God. I mean, really, um and this, I've seen that so many, particularly moms who open back up because they need to be in service of their kids. Like, you'll do it for your kid. It, you might not have, I mean, not, might maybe not you personally, but somebody might not do it for themselves, but they'll do it because their kid needs them, right? Yeah. So that's beautiful. I love that.
And so as you go through all this, you know that you're different and you're trying to have that balance, you're balancing the scales. Okay, you're ready to be a medium, then you are a medium, you freak out for a moment, you go back and you become a therapist. And you
Yeah.
found an avenue to bring that all together and help people. As you're
Yeah.
doing that, I'm sure at some point it has helped you find some peace for yourself and who you're helping.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, I don't really call myself a medium. I say mediumship happens, but I'm not a medium. I'm more of a generalist as a psychic. So I'm like looking more at, as a psychic, I'm a soul reader. So I'm looking at the essence of who you are, as your eternal self, as your soul. Like, maybe like what your past life history is, what your life purpose is, what the obstacles that are preventing you from living in that purpose, what your future holds, what your mission is, who your contracts are with your soulmates, who your spirit team are. Like that's sort of my range. And I would say mediumship happens because sometimes mediumship needs to be what's, or, in the moment, what my client needs. Um, and, and and I love that your point about peace for me, and I just turned 60, so I feel like more peaceful than I ever have in my life. Less anxious, more peaceful. And I think that inner peace for me has been about really knowing myself, that not trying to be something I'm not trying to sort of live from the voice of my inner critic. Like I do a lot of inner child work. The book that I'm working on right now is about inner child work. And it was really when I started talking to my own inner child, when I was reparenting myself and quieting the voice of the inner critic, that I found real peace. And I think that our whole spiritual journey can offer us that as we peel off the layers of the trauma that we've been through, what we've all been through, that create a lot of jangle in our nervous system, really jack up our nervous systems. As we do our inner healing work, we find peace. As we find a way to be of service to humanity, because I think we have twin missions here: heal the wound, heal our personal wound, and be of service to humanity. Like we all have that somehow. And when we start doing that, when we've healed our inner wounds enough to start being deeply of service to humanity, we find another layer of inner peace. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that leads me to the first question I love to ask is what is your personal definition of peace?
I think for me, it's about a couple of things. On the most surface level, it would be like a nervous system and emotional regulation, right? So when we learn how to regulate our nervous system, bring ourselves out of fight or flight, when we learn how to process our emotions, it's not like I don't get triggered. I get triggered all the time. It's just I'm really much better at knowing what to do, knowing how to re-regulate my nervous system, knowing how to process my own emotional reactivity, right? So I think I wish, Janice, wish I had a magic wand and I could wave it over all of humanity and teach them in an instant how to regulate their nervous system and how to regulate their emotions. Because I swear we'd have no more war. We'd have no more road rage. We'd have no more the tragedies we see on the news every day if we could all just ratchet down and like bring our nervous system back into peace, bring our emotions back into peace. So I think that's a big part. That's probably the top layer. I think the next layer down is we lose our peace when we try to be somebody we're not. When we're like, oh well, I really want to be an artist. I really want to be a psychic. I really want to be a healer, but my parents wanted me to be a lawyer, or I'm trying to like work in some soul sucking corporate day job that kills me day by day every minute. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yes. Yes.
that
Absolutely.
that's like to live in a soul aligned life, to live, and it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It is really hard, and there are obstacles like, well, we have bills we got to pay, and and it's expensive to live in our country right now. Like it's nuts, um, but I think the more in alignment we can get with our true nature, our mission, we have another layer of peace. And then I think the last, like I said, it's being of service. Like I think a big part of it too is like getting out of other people's business, you
Yeah.
know, and staying in your own lane. One of my spiritual teachers, his motto is "Mind your own business." And
Yep.
he just says it all the time. Like MYOB, mind your own business. And when we get um into like it's like really big now, like Mel Robbins talking about the let them theory, like where you just sort of let people be who they are, and we get out that. I think is um a big part of it. And I think that the top layer, like the most spiritual layer, is kind of like what the Buddhists have been saying all along, that when we are attached, when we have attachment, we suffer, you know, and that the nature of the world is to change. Everything's changing, nothing stays the same. So, we can't, when we hold on to things, try to hold on to our youth, we try to hold on to our, I don't know, credit score or our bank account statement, like what's in our bank account. We try to hold on to the ego ideal. So what your ego tells you you should be and what you should have and where you should live. Like our egos are kind of crazy. They're like pretty neurotic and messed up,
Oh,
you know?
definitely.
And if we let the ego drive, we're always going to suffer. And when we sit back and live from the higher self, go more into the flow. And this is sort of, I think, a lot of what I think, what I observe about people shifting. You hear the conversation about people shifting out of the 3D world into the 5D world, into the quantum world. And that shift is out of the ego self and into this higher, living from your higher self. Your higher self's so much, your higher self's like, sliding down, it's like a lazy river, like floating down, going with the flow, and allowing the moments to unravel, or allowing your path to unravel, like, like the yellow brick road under your feet, really. So I think there's so many different layers to, I don't know if there's one thing we have to do. I think it's continuing to work through those things, starting with the body, the nervous system, starting with the emotions, emotional regulation. We have to work through our mind, our mindset, mentally, like the mental body. What are we thinking? What are we saying to ourselves? And we have to work through the spiritual self, which is where we let go of the ego's death grip on trying to drive and put it in the backseat and let the higher self drive.
That's so funny. I always put mine in a cocoon. That's like it's time for you to go take a nap in the cocoon.
Yeah,
Um, because it does
that's
like to,
awesome.
it does love to try and drive for sure.
Yeah.
And with all of those many definitions, but as you bring them together for yourself, how do you find peace for yourself? We hear time and time again spending time in nature and meditation and music and silence,
Yeah.
and you can do any of those, all of those. What is your way to bring yourself some peace?
There's a couple things that I do as a daily spiritual practice. I think spiritual practice is incredibly important. And the first thing I do in the morning, and I usually spend about an hour every morning, sort of attending to my inner self. So I'm journaling. I wake up and I'm like, am I okay? Like, how do I feel? Like, what am I all right? I don't think I am, And so I might do some EFT. I love tapping. I might journal. I might just like contemplate, like, am I all right? Um, to kind of like really, and I do that for until I feel at peace with myself. Sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour and a half. I pull cards. I have sort of a whole list of things I do until I feel like I'm in my zone. And then about midday, I do meditation. So my hippie parents took me to transcendental meditation when I was 10. God bless them, because that's what you did when you were a hippie in 1974.
That's
And
okay.
yeah, God bless them. I'm so happy. So I have had a lifelong meditation practice, and I meditate for 22 minutes, kind of midday. I also take a nap. I'm a huge napper. I love a nap to kind of reset myself. And then I also, I feel like I like to garden. So I spending time in nature. Like you said, I walk my dog every day down to the beach. And, um, I'm really prioritized my self-care. I try not to doom scroll. I try not to, pay attention to the news. And then I do another meditation round before I go to bed, you know? So I really prioritize my inner state. It's the most important thing. And when I do that, everything flows. I'm in the flow. Everything's really great. When I don't do that, it's a train wreck. You know what I mean? It's not, things are so much more rough. It can be the same day. It's really my internal perception. Like if I start in a good state, that day could be fantastic. I could have the same exact day, but if I start on a bad foot, it's a terrible day. The only difference is my inner. I believe that like the outer world is a representation of my inner state of consciousness, and
Yeah,
all I can really do to save the world is continually manage my own state of consciousness, which is a full-time job.
it is.
You know.
It is.
Yeah.
But what you just said kind of references that whole emerald tablet, as above, so below, so within,
Yeah.
so without.
That's right.
And that's it is a full-time job. It is hard to manage in and still function in society.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
being the case, and you being this mentor now for others, how do you help others bring peace into their own lives?
I think it's my mentoring is a kind of a combination of knowledge, practice, and inner work. So I do inner child work in almost every single one of my classes. Like I teach business classes for healers who want to go pro, and we do inner child work in business class because I noticed after doing a lot of business coaching for people that I could tell someone what to do or advise them what to do, but if we don't do inner child work, they won't do it. And the same is true for me. So I've been doing inner child work every day for 25 years. And the next thing that I'm about to do in the business scares the heck out of my inner child. You know what I mean? The next thing, oh, be on TV or teach a class on the Shift Network or write another book or like go speak in this conference in front of 500 people, which I just recently did. And I was like, my inner child, my higher self was like, yeah. And my inner child's like, don't make me do that. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think we can all relate to that.
So I think it's like that's the work. I do a lot of that work. I love the healing work. I love shadow work. I love like let's get down and dirty. Let's take the top off the box and really look at, you know, what what the wounds are. And I think this is where my training as a therapist has been really helpful because I'm not afraid to like go into the darkness and it's just people's trauma. Like and it's been pretty gnarly. And to go in there and really bring love to that, bring compassion to that, bring to witness that. And I think as a healer, I believe like the secret ingredient of healing is about our presence. And I believe that the modality doesn't matter. The modality is like I mean, modalities do matter. We need to have modalities because we need to have some sort of process, some sort of structure that we use to work with our clients. But which one you use doesn't matter at all. They're all good. They all work, pretty much.
Yep.
And but what they are is the delivery mechanism for our presence. So when we're grounded, heart open, in our body, and totally present with our clients, and we're open our heart to compassion when we connect to divine source, and we're channeling divine love, divine compassion, and we really listen, we really show up and listen, people get better.
Yeah.
And so our presence is the magic ingredient. Our presence plus divine presence. I think it's both. So it might be you and your angels, or you and the ascended masters, or you going straight up to divine source, straight up to God. And, you bring that energy into your heart, and it's like a combination of prayer and really showing up and letting somebody air out what they've been hiding. That's the secret sauce. That's what does it.
And having been doing this for quite some time, I'm sure you've been met with a lot of resistance. So how do we kind of break past that resistance? Because people are like, I
Yeah.
want to do this, I'm ready to show up, but we always have that resistance, and you know when you're in flow, and you know when you're not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think like when I teach psychic development class, the first thing I talk about is fear. People sign up for psychic class and they're like, I'm afraid. I'm going to see something bad. I'm afraid people are going to think I'm crazy. I'm afraid my neighbors in the HOA are going to throw rocks at me. You know what I mean? I'm afraid like I don't know. I'm afraid I'm going to attract that, darkness. And I think like really addressing those fears and like maybe updating some of our old beliefs. Like, do you really think it's the devil? Like, do you? Like, I know your granny told you that, but do you think that like I think we need to sort of update those things. And when we do, I think I think we can bring ourselves into the present moment, you know? So I'm like, resistance is fun for me to like look at. Like, let's lean into it. Let's open it up. People who are skeptical, I'm like, great, let's talk about it. You know, I don't, I feel like meeting resistance with an openness and curiosity and seeing it as sort of just part of the process. I don't really, I almost hardly don't, almost hardly ever notice it, honestly. I'm like, well, I can feel the resistance in myself. If I'm working with resistance with other people, I'm like, let's talk about the part of you that's in resistance. Let's take care of that part. It's probably, maybe it's your inner child, you know, and I'm really committed to not dragging anyone through. We don't drag our inner child sort of backwards through the hedge when they're in resistance. If you have a child who's resisting, I mean, hopefully we're not like, shut up and we're going to do it anyway. Hopefully we don't do that. Hopefully we're like, well, what do you need? What does that scared part of you need? What does that scared part of me need before I get on stage in front of 500 people? You know, I don't drag myself through that. I'm like, I tend to that part of me with care and love and attention and curiosity. And I think when we do that, resistance sort of like, it sort of disappears. You know if that made sense. Does that make sense?
That made total sense, especially what you just said about speaking in front of 500 people. And it's like, well, what do I need? Why, taking the moment is like, okay, why am I scared? What do I need?
Yeah.
And kind of working through that.
And
I'm
then
going to,
giving yourself what you need, giving, like, really giving it. And I have this like negotiation tactic with my inner child. I'm like, we're going to do the hearts, we got to do the heart scary thing, and then when we're done with the heart scary thing, what do you want to do? We'll do what you want to do. Like, if you had a real kid that you were working with, you know, then we're going to take a nap, then we're going to walk the dog on the beach, then we're going to go out for ice cream, then we're going to do something fun and creative, like, you know. And I find that works for me, you know, to really care for myself, which means giving myself what I need when I can.
I think that is wonderful advice for anybody who is starting anything new, a new venture, someone going, I mean, I know it's only July, but we've got kids who are going to be going off to college, and that's really scary if you're not,
Yeah.
as a commuter, you have a little bit of a safety net. But if you're like me, I went off the
Yeah.
deep end, I went away, and that's a
Hmm.
big thing for a lot of young people. It's their first time away from home, and it's like, wait,
Yeah.
I got to do everything? Do I know how to do anything? And it's kind of scary as a parent. It's like,
There's a
did I
YouTube video
prepare
for it.
you? Wait, I don't know if I taught you everything yet, but it's also scary as a parent. I'm not sure how you handled it, but it's scary as a parent at this point in their lives because it's like, oh, I have to let go.
Mhm.
That's
So
very
hard.
hard.
It's hard for everybody. And those beautiful transitions, like whenever we sort of hit a new developmental stage, you know, whether it's leaving home and going to college or, you know, getting married, having a child. My kids are adults, so they're in the like getting married, having children, buying their own home stage of things. And I don't think we ever stop being challenged by what's new. We're always going to enter into the next new thing. We never have any idea what we're getting ourselves into. We just do it. You know what I mean? And probably if we really knew, we wouldn't do it. You know,
That's the
it might be
truth.
it might be a blessing we don't know, right? And I think so. There's sort of like a resiliency and adaptability that we have that we can um like we don't know, we're never going to be in a position where we know what we're doing.
I
We're
agree.
really, you know what I mean, but we can have faith that we're resilient and adaptable, and you know that we can figure it out. Like I said, there's a YouTube video about how to do it. And whatever it is. And that we can be like, all right, I'm going to figure it out, I'm resilient, I'm adaptable. And I think that's the thing, like, we should teach our children is how to be resilient and adaptable, and able to learn the new, right? Because there's always the next new.
There's always the next now. And that kind of brings me to the question I really love to ask when it comes to pulling in things for ourselves and maybe helping others, and that's what's in your toolbox.
Mhm.
And that let's take this two ways. Let's focus a moment on the young people because change is scary and navigating that can be scary. How can we kind of like teach that resilience as parents, as educators, as mentors?
Mm. Um, I think like with my kids, I always gave them a pretty long leash. Like I had high expectations for them. As long as they met their expectations, I gave them a lot of freedom. I knew they were going to make mistakes. I knew that we all learned by making mistakes. I didn't criticize my kids for making mistakes. In fact, in my family, there's kind of this saying like, "Mom, mom, I've got myself in a predicament." And I knew they were gonna get into predicaments. I'm like, "Okay, let's brainstorm about how you're gonna get yourself out of this
Out of it.
predicament. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you get out of it. I'm gonna help you figure out how to get out of it. I'm not gonna save or fix it for you, but let's talk about how you're gonna get out of the predicament you got yourself into." And I think that's how my kids, and it's so funny, it's still code word. One of my kids will be like, "Mom, I got myself in a predicament." They're 30 years old now. They're still getting into predicaments. But that kind of like, I didn't give them the expectation that they had to be perfect. I knew they were going to make mistakes, and it's kind of like not a big deal. I'm not going to yell at you or judge you or criticize. I'm going to help you figure it out. And for me, that's what worked in my family. I don't know. What do you think? Did that answer your question about how do we teach resilience?
It does. It does. It helps. It's like, okay, you got this in. I'll help you brainstorm. I
Yeah,
kind of take a similar approach in a lot of ways. It's kind of like, okay,
yeah.
now what?
Now what? Now what are we gonna do? Now what are you gonna do? And I got your back, but what are you gonna do?
Absolutely. And now on more of the adult side of life,
Mhm.
we all have these challenges, and sometimes we feel like we're gonna crumble. And
Yeah,
we have all these tools. We know we're gonna be okay, but sometimes we forget we're gonna be okay. So how can we kind of what can we pull in? I know you mentioned regulating the nervous system, and that
yeah,
would be first and foremost. But what can we
yeah.
pull in to bring some peace and reassurance to ourselves?
I think for me, it's a lot about community, and I think that we try to go it alone, and that's a fail. Or it's torture. Like it's so hard to go it alone. Can we belong to a community of like-minded people who are going to support us? We're sort of tribal. As human beings, we're tribal. We're meant to be in community. And having a mentor, having a peer group, having colleagues, having friends, having people who are going to show up and assist you when you need help. The idea that we don't need help, I think we got to let that go. Um, so I think that's and I don't know, we've been living in a culture where we become more and more isolated, more and more disconnected from our communities. The pandemic really like, you know, cut so many of us out of our communities, or just the way we live now. I think the number one thing is to find community, and the other thing is get support. I have a team, you know. I have business coaches. I have my own mentors and spiritual teachers. I'm always part of a mastermind. I'm always part of a spiritual group. I've got a lot, as many support systems around me as I can, because to me, that's sort of the difference between heaven and hell. Heaven on earth is full of other people, and full of supportive community, team members, like staff, like assistants, mentors, all of that. And hell is really thrashing your way through it alone, which I spend a lot of time doing. I mean, I know both sides of that very well. And so community and support, however we can get it, I think, I would add that into the spiritual practice, whatever your spiritual practice is. Um, if you need therapy, get therapy. If you need a coach, get a coach. If you need a healer, get a healer. I think as healers, I always say we're always our first and best client. Like I never stop working on myself. And if I stop working on doing my inner work, my clients dry up. My business dries up. It's the client, it's the healer that's done the most inner work that has a line of clients out the door. Because our clients can tell. They can tell how deep you can go, that you can only go as deep with your clients as if you've been inside yourself. And they can tell. So that's my other recommendation, is never stop working on yourself.
That is a very important reminder. Very
Yeah.
important reminder. Because people sometimes, oh, I've reached where I want to be. And then, like you said, things stop.
Mm, yeah. I mean, I think there's a sort of a balance we have to take where, my orientation is to have a lot of discipline and be a hard worker. So in order to find balance in my life, I have to make myself go have fun, which sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Or you're having too much fun and you're not working enough. Like,
Yeah.
so finding that sort of work life balance is really key. About like play, creativity, is a really important of our part of our health and our wellness, our mental health and our physical health and our wellness in general. So, um, I think we really deeply underestimate the power of play and creativity as spiritually restorative and energetically restorative.
Oh wow, that hits a little hard in one respect that I am doing Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, and I love
Yes.
that. I love her
Yes.
book,
Yep.
and now it's just following through and being disciplined and doing all of those
Yeah.
things to have play. Because I'm like you said, it's
Mhm.
sometimes you have to pencil in the fun, and
I
it's like
do.
I can relate. I can
Yeah. So
totally
what are we gonna do
relate.
for fun? What are we gonna do for fun? And that fun time just restores me, like rejuvenates me. And that when I come back to work, I'm coming at it with like a whole different angle. So I love to dance and I belong to a dance group and a dance community. And I just like that's my thing. I go dance and it refreshes me, restores me, brings me peace. I think play can bring us peace too.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you kind of let yourself go a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and so I have a fun question. Out of the books that you have currently published, what is your favorite and why?
Oh man, that's a tough question because to me they're like my children. Like, how do you pick a favorite child? Like they're all that I love something about all of them. My first book, The Art of Psychic Reiki, is the book that has sold the most. It's the most popular, and it just continues to sell a ton. And that is a combination of Reiki and psychic development. So I have a real sweet spot for that. Sort of like my first child. You know what I mean? The book that I have, Energy Healing for Empaths, I have a sweet spot for because empaths are my people. And it's like I wrote that book for my beloved empath community as sort of like a love offering, as it's like, I love you, like, here, let me help you. Here's this, what I know about it. And then my newest book, The Art of Psychic Reiki, Awakening Your Psychic Ability, is really about, how do we awaken how do we get our psychic ability up to its highest level. But I think the one that I love the most is always the one I'm working on currently. And my current is like I'm pregnant with the next one, and that's called Spiritual Sacred Reparenting, Spiritual and Intuitive Healing for Your Inner Child. So I just finished chapter 4. Chapter 4 was about generational trauma. It was hard to write. Um,
Mm.
and this book is like it's really hitting me hard as I write it because it's digging up all of my own stuff and putting it in my face, which always happens a little when I'm writing, but this one is inner child stuff. So my suspicion will be this is the one that I'm like, that's my magnum opus. That's the one that really, because it's what moved the needle for me in my own life. And I'm really hoping that it helps other people do that too.
Oh, so we'll be excited to when that one comes out. So I would like
Yeah.
to thank you, Lisa, for joining us today on Unique Peace. This has been a wonderful journey, and I'm sure we've all learned something new.
Thank you so much, Janice, for this incredible podcast and all the other beautiful work you're doing in the world.
Thank you. And so Lisa's going to go in the green room. I want to thank everybody for joining Lisa and I today on Unique Peace, and I look forward to seeing all of you next week.